Welcome to MSP Voice, the weekly show for MSPs by MSPs. Brought to you by Cloudberry, the #1 cross-platform cloud backup. Learn more at cloudberrylab.com. This is MSP Voice. Hello and welcome to MSP Voice. This is episode number 54. Today in the interview, I am joined by Dave Davenport with MotherG out of the Chicago area. Dave has a great story about how they ended up calling their company MotherG, so definitely listen to that. It's a really interesting exploration into branding and what goes into picking a name, which I'm sure many of you have gone through yourselves. So great interview. He talks about a lot of other things, but I thought that the brand story was really pretty interesting. Some housekeeping this week, mspvoice.com, as always, is your source for all things MSP Voice. Something we have coming up next week is a webinar. So part of our webinar series on July 16th at 2 p.m., we'll be talking with TechStack. TechStack, they're an interesting company. I call them kind of like the Angie's List for MSPs. So they have kind of a directory of managed service providers that you can sign up to be part of. They go out and market to small businesses and make connections for MSPs in their directory and these small businesses. So, if you're looking for a way to grow your customers, definitely join in this webinar to hear what they have to offer. And again, if you want to be a guest, just click on the Be the Next Guest right there in the top bar, fill out the form. I'd love to have you on here. Scheduling is very flexible and very easy. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into what's going on this week. Got a couple of news items to share. Since we were off last week, these are somewhat old, but I still think we're just at least a quick mention. So the first up is, this is Reddit, but it's basically, they shared an article from the Register. It was about a company that says, hey, if you've been hit by ransomware, I can decrypt your files. But what this company actually does is secretly negotiates and pays the ransom, but then collects money from the customer with a huge margin. So it's an interesting story. Things you have to watch out for when someone says, "Hey, I can cure you of your ransomware. I can decrypt your files." They may actually just be going behind your back, negotiating with the hackers, and still banking a fat margin. Now, is it right or wrong? I'm not here to say. Ethically, I think it's on the borderline. But if they get you back in business at a fraction of the cost of what the ransom would have been, then hey, I say go for it. There, of course, as always on Reddit, there's a ton of comments, including one right here from someone who speaks Russian fluently, who was able to negotiate it from $5,000 to something like $200. So, it's definitely, if you can negotiate, definitely do it. This was an interesting way that he did to negotiate, but a lot of huge, funny, interesting comments in here. Take a read if you've got some time. Next up is still in the ransomware department, so to speak, is about Florida City fires an IT employee after paying $460,000 Bitcoin ransom to hackers. So it's a familiar story. It's a city. They get hit by ransomware. They tried for a couple of days to see if they could get things back. They couldn't, so they ended up paying almost $500,000 to the hackers to get their systems back. Now, anytime that happens, there's going to be repercussions somewhere. And in this case, the director of information technology was fired. And who's to blame the city and the city managers for doing that? It's the director of IT. They should be responsible. They should have systems protected. They should have air-gapped backups and all these different types of things that we talk about all the time. But also, as an MSP, if you have a customer who gets hit by ransomware, you could probably expect the same fate of getting fired by that customer. So definitely something to be wary of. It's one of those things. No one wants to get hit, but if you do, someone's going to have to pay the price besides the Bitcoin. But somebody's going to have to pay the ultimate price, probably with their jobs. And finally, something else that has been all over the place because of the repercussions it has for partners, for Microsoft partners. Microsoft is ending their partner internal use rights, or IUR, for software and cloud services. Wow. So essentially, if you were a Microsoft partner, you'd have internal use licenses. You could use it for servers, workstations, even some cloud services. They're doing away with that. So the Microsoft Action Pack subscription is kind of it's still there, but they're changing the wording and the license. They're changing the wording of it so that you'll only be able to use it for demonstration, solution services, development purposes, and internal training. So you'll actually be able to use it. Huge change. Especially for Microsoft partners that have relied on this and don't want to have to pay necessarily the huge sums for the full use licenses because they're partners and they're helping Microsoft sell the technology. So there's a lot of debate going on about this right now. The good news is it doesn't go into effect for another year, so July 1st of 2020. So there is time. There is time for you to let your voice be heard. To let Microsoft know what's going on. I think I even saw someone with a change.org petition that you can sign. So it's a huge policy change for Microsoft, has a lot of repercussions for Microsoft partners, and especially the MSP community. So something to be aware of. And again, let Microsoft know what you think, and maybe they will change the policy back to the way it was. All right, with that, enjoy the interview, again, with Dave Davenport from MotherG. Fun interview this week. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you will too. Thanks, and have a great week. Hello, and welcome. Today, I am happy to be joined by Dave Davenport with MotherG out of the Chicagoland area. Dave, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm the CEO of MotherG. We're an IT managed service company, which I guess is probably obvious for the podcast. We started in 2006 as a pure play MSP and have gone through maybe 3 iterations of our business model. But today we're pretty proud of the organization we have and growing and expanding it into actually Milwaukee now as well. So Chicago and Milwaukee.
Great. Now, MotherG is an interesting name. What's the history behind that? Most people are like, Bob IT or something like that, sort of IT services. And here you have MotherG.
Well, when you think of names, TransTech Consulting Services, how does that grab you?
Yeah.
Well, that's how we started. And really, when we started the company, it was a offshoot of a staffing company that my wife and I had called TransTech.
Okay.
And we entered that SMB market somewhat tentatively and weren't sure whether we could actually build a business model around it. So my right-hand man, Philippe Schmidt, and I endeavored in. And as the business started to grow and we believed this new thing of managed services was really going to take off, we thought, TransTech Consulting Services could be possibly the worst name ever. And so we actually had a client, a marketing company, that helped us, and they did this ideation thing, came up with 3 pages of names like Vader Data Systems, terrible names. And we looked at them all. They looked at us and said, "Yeah, I know they all suck." And so they came back about this is going on for weeks, and they come back to us and they call me and say, "Hey, we got your name. We got your name." I'm like, "Great, send it over. I got a website. I got to get, letterhead." Back then we needed letterhead. It's kind of embarrassing, but I'm like, they're like, "No, you got to come in for this." I'm like, "Oh, all right, whatever. We've been waiting this long." So we go to their offices and they do this big setup on the name, and they're talking about how much trouble they had trying to come up with it. "We really love your brand. We love the service you provide. But we had to go back to the archetypes because we couldn't come up with a name." And so they said, so we went back to the archetypes. You're always there 24/7, taking care of you, protecting your clients, keeping them safe and secure from all the threats out there. And you're providing the advice they need, not necessarily what they want. That was a big thing that we talked about. And that you'll fix all their problems. You'll take care of them. You'll always be there for them. And as he's going through this litany of archetype descriptions, I'm thinking, "Oh no, you're not going to tell me Mother? We're naming our company Mother?" because that archetype really comes out strong and clear. And so we added the G because of the domain requirements, and Mother on its own is kind of too open. Yeah. So we added guardians of your technology, guardians of your vital technology. And so that's where the G comes from. And really, when you think of what we do for our clients, if you take IT and add the archetype of mother, that's really what we do. Even if you don't like your mother, I mean, people appreciate that representation of what a mother does for a business. And so that's really what we do. And we, you know what, the name is stuck. And one of the things that's awesome about our name is when people meet us, they never forget the name. Yeah. And that's awesome, right? Yep. Much better than TransTech Consulting Services.
Yeah, it's always difficult. I've been through a couple of rebranding exercises, trying to come up with a new name, and it's not an easy process, as you you just explained.
No, and it becomes so overwhelming. At one point, we just thought, you know what, let's just go back. We called ourselves TCS. And I'm like, no, shit, I keep forgetting, because it's Tata Consulting Services is TCS. Like we're a little tiny compared to Tata.
Yeah. So, it sounds like, when you did make that transition from kind of the staffing to MSP, you went right into MSP and didn't do break fix. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. Okay. And that was an intentional, we did the precious metal plan, silver, gold, platinum for a while. And our silver plan had elements of break fix in it. Okay. But it was still always, from its inception, really this concept of proactive services. And we've just continued to hone and refine that model. So we never had to go through that upsetting model of converting a break fix client to a managed services. We did have the challenge of converting our silver clients to our now, exclusively comprehensive. And, frankly, they couldn't understand why we were forcing them to do that, because we did a good job on their support. And they couldn't understand what this proactive stuff was really going to do for them. But we now don't have any of those left, and are a clean MSP, as we like to say.
Okay. Now, what about verticals? Do you guys specialize in one particular area versus others?
Yeah, over half our business is manufacturing, industrial type clients, and frankly, our business model really aligns well in that space. I grew up. My dad was a manufacturer, and I grew up in the factory, and walking around. I really understand the concept of keeping the flow running. For example, the labeling machine, which doesn't sound like a big deal in a manufacturer, it is critical. You can't ship anything without the barcode label on it. And so, your kind of mission critical subsystems are different than what you might normally find in, say, a law firm or a bank, for example. And so we align well there. I really like it too. I think of it as the backbone of our economy, and certainly in Chicago and Milwaukee, manufacturing a big element of what produces commerce around here.
Yeah, and I know what you mean about those printers. I've done some consulting work in the warehousing and shipping space, and like you said, different systems are mission critical to different people.
Yeah, I mean, one of our clients, when we took them on, email was their mission critical app. And when we dug in a little bit with them, their technology was really far behind. But it was the way in which they processed orders. So it's how their clients sent them orders and how they sent confirmation of the orders and gave them delivery dates. Oh, okay. And it was a daily kind of business where their orders were coming in all day long. And so, man, when email went down, which is why they signed up with us, was because they were having such trouble with that. Now we've gotten them evolved and helped them, make some transition to better technology solutions that aren't so flaky. But you have to be attuned to what drives your client's business, and I think that's really where the evolution of technology is evolving. Yeah. If you're in the server management business, you got a half-life here that's approaching, another iteration that's going to change your business quite a bit.
Yeah, I agree.
If you're in the technology management business, technology is no less complex than it was, and I think really, frankly, more complex today than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah. And, you said you've been doing this since, 2006. So I'm sure you've seen your share of just the software you use to run your business, right? I mean, obviously, your customers are diverse and they have all sorts of different software, but, you probably have a core set of software that you use to run your business.
Oh, yeah.
How has that changed over the last many years?
Well, when we started, again, it was kind of a science project for the first 6 months. And, we thought, are people really going to sign up for this? And when they started saying yes, we're like, uh-oh, we got to get serious about this fast. So we signed up with a company called LPI. I don't know if you remember LPI. They were in Canada. They've gotten bought. I don't remember who bought them, but they were terrible. So we moved to Kaseya in shortly after that, and we're with Kaseya for a number of years, and then moved. We had ConnectWise on the front end of Kaseya because they didn't have a PSA.
Yeah.
And then when ConnectWise bought LabTech, it seemed like the logical progression for integration purposes, and Kaseya was making noises that they were going to do something different, and they were going into the corporate space. So we switched to ConnectWise. Probably near and dear to your heart, the ones that have gone through the most iterations are in the subsystems like backups and we've added a lot of security products over the years. As more threats become apparent, our tool suite has to expand and grow as well. And so the business of managing the client's infrastructure proactively and preventatively has gotten much more sophisticated than what it was. When we started, monitoring a server was a big deal. Today, like that, it's not even entrance to the game. Like if you can't even say that, you should just leave the industry with your head hung low. But being able to rely on those tools and do the work for you is essential to getting the productivity out of your team.
Okay. Yeah. No. And how often do you reevaluate? I mean, like you said, it's kind of a constant mix. Are you always on the hunt, or is it a quarterly thing?
I would, when I take surveys and they describe, they say, are you an innovator, which means bleeding edge technology, or an early adopter? I would classify us as early adopters. Okay. I would say we want technology, but we're not going to buy the bleeding edge tool.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think that's a poor choice in our business, unless it's solving a problem that's so critical that you must go forward with it, regardless of the risks of new technology. But I think we have to rely on the tool to be in the 5 nines of reliability if we're putting our name on it for our clients. And so we adopt those early tools. I think the biggest thing, though, frankly, is that you really have to invest in the people, the intellectual capital of the people who are running the tools.
Yeah.
I see too many companies that call themselves MSPs, but really are tool distributors, frankly, that buy these tools and think, it's enough for them to have the tool, like monitoring, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can buy LabTech and turn on a server monitor, right? What do you get out of that? Backups, right? Barry, it's one thing to say, I have the tool and I can do backups, but somebody's got to keep those jobs running. And when they fail, what caused it to fail? Yeah. The best backup tool in the world is still going to have failures every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're, we do a weekly KPI review, and last week we had in the ballpark of 21,000 backup jobs run.
Wow.
Now, you think of all the servers and workstations that you're backing up, and then how frequently you're running those. And we're running, north of 99% success rate on those.
That's great.
Okay, that sounds great. That's fantastic. Do you want to be the 0.1% guy?
No.
Right. So just because you're at 99 it sounds great, but it's the 1% that's going to come back and cost you your business. And so, you really have to have the diligence of your team member who's in charge of your centralized services to really put those scripts forward, to really manage and drive those things. Otherwise, the rest of the organization is almost irrelevant.
Yeah. So how many folks do you have there at MotherG now?
I think 30, 31, something like that.
Yeah, you're good size. A lot of the MSPs I talk to, some are owner operators. I think single person. Others, have a small team. So, there's a wide range out there of people, that in this market and providing services.
And I think relative sophistication too. We had a really hard time getting it's kind of a double humped camel in the business, right? There's two hurdles in growth, and it's the first hurdle, getting where you have enough people to have a help desk separate from your proactive team, separate from your project team, and that's really kind of the first hump, which puts you at around 10 people.
Yeah.
And then that next hump, it really is a sales growth hump that you need to get scale so that when somebody goes on PTO, you don't lose a department. And that's really the second growth hump. But we've got there a few years ago, and it changed. It changes the business, positive and negative. That growth is wonderful from a distribution of roles where you have fewer people wearing multiple hats, and we're down to the point now where I think only one or two of the team is wearing multiple hats.
Yeah.
But managing your culture when you're bringing in all these people is really critical. Like when there were 5 to 10 of us, it was simple. You'd smack somebody on the side of the head because you knew what was happening. Hey, we don't talk to clients that way. Smack. But when you've got 30 people. I'm not listening to that anymore. I'm busy. I've got meetings. I'm going to clients. I'm jumping all over the place. And so some of those elements have to be more organizationally driven, and the culture of the team has to hold the team accountable to that culture. So it tends to be a snowballing effect.
Yeah.
And frankly, I can tell you, not that many years ago, we had that where the snowball was going the wrong way, and we had to kind of intervene and diagnose what was going on and fix it.
Yeah, it's a constant thing. It's one thing to bring in a bunch of new business, but it's another thing to make sure that you maintain what got you started and why you're doing this to begin with. And that's part of that culture idea. To make sure that you're customer satisfaction and it's all about service and all those types of things. So that is very important.
Right. Yeah. And not the shift, I think, that is key is that your team has to recognize that it's not about fixing the problem, right? I mean, that's what our business is, that fundamentally, whether it's proactive or reactive.
Yeah.
We're looking for problems and we fix them. And we're smart guys. So we know how to identify the problems and fix them.
Yeah.
And it's, 80, 90% of what we do. And so you get this myopathy that goes on where you just, first of all you're doing is looking for problems, which, drives my wife a little bit crazy at times. But so you have to remember what your vision is for the organization. And then secondly, when you're working with the client, you have to recognize that it's not the problem that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's that they can't do something in their business. So, we talked about that label printer thing. Yeah. When we talk to our client and they say the label printer's down, if our team is thinking, oh, I've got a printer that's down, all right, I got to fix the printer. It's a printer.
Yeah.
But if we recognize that, hey, the entire revenue stream of this company is currently halted, and they're freaking out for legitimate reasons.
Mm-hmm.
They may have penalties. They may have, certain deliverable deadlines that they have to live with, and we're in the way. And they look at us as the problem, right? Because we're the ones that can fix it. Once you can fix the problem, you're the problem, right? So the faster you fix that, is the better. But doing it in a way that understands the issue that really is driving them is where you have to make that jump. And that's a cultural thing where your team has to be sensitive to the real problem, and we see this. You see a lot of people talk about it in the medical industry where, the doctors or the nurses treat you like just a piece of meat coming through their system, and they're going to process you where, the person that they're processing might have life-threatening cancer or some sort of serious disease, and what that person is going through mentally is almost worse than the physical disease that they carry. And that without that empathy to understand that, the experience is terrible. And they've done studies where the care is much more successful. The actual physiology of the patient is better when there's this empathy to the emotional condition that the person's in. And so I think we take that to heart at Mother when we're trying to serve our clients, that we understand that this is an emotional issue for the client as well as a technical issue.
Yeah, no, that's great. Great insight, great advice in terms of how to look at your day to day, but then also their day to day, and kind of join those together to understand that, hey, just because it's a printer, it's critical and all those types of things. So having empathy for the customer for what they're going through is very important.
Yeah.
So, if you had some advice for someone who's looking to get started in the MSP business, what would be some of your advice for them?
Buy a flak jacket. Do CrossFit for a while. I think having a vision for that client experience about what you're really trying to bring to the table that's different than the other people that say they're trying to provide managed services. Have a vision for what that outcome looks like, and build the processes, align the technology, and hire the right people that have the same belief system that you do. And I think when you have the right belief system of the team, which comes first, find the right tools and invest in the good tools. Don't go cheap on the tools. And then integrate these things together with your processes to deliver the outcome that you had for the original vision. That's really what this is all about. There's no quick solutions here. There's no fast money to be made. It is, but I can tell you the cool thing is when you build that vision, you build the right processes, and you get the people who really believe in what you're trying to do together, the business is so much easier to run. Our early days, I felt like I was a goat herder. And I didn't really understand a lot of these things, frankly. And I didn't understand the power of culture. I thought it was kind of, I was an MBA in economics and finance. Culture was touchy-feely crap until you recognize that it's wrong. And I happened to read Tony Hsieh's book on Zappos, which led me to tribal leadership, because he talks about that in his book. And I read that book, and those two books really changed my whole view of organizations and business. And as we started to really invest in those things, our business started to really germinate and grow, and it becomes like a weed almost, where it kind of takes on a life of its own. And as long as it's trimmed properly, it can really become amazing. So I think those are the key things if you really want to build a successful business, is make sure you have a vision for what you want to do that's meaningful and different from what your competition has. Because if somebody comes and says they want to do the same thing as MotherG, and we go out and meet the same client, and they're 5 to 10 people, and just started a year or two ago, why would anyone want to go with them versus MotherG if we're doing the same thing? I'm bigger, I've been longer. I can prove out my systems better. I have great testimonials. Nobody's gonna do that. So you got to come up with something that's a little bit different, and then really focus that differentiation to the client base that values that difference.
Yeah. And I think too, like you said, part of it is have a vision. You have to understand what are your goals. Yeah. Just in this, you're starting this business, is it your goal just to run it by yourself for as long as you can and get by?
Yeah. Really good point, Doug. Really good point.
Or do you want to build a company that's going to start out small, but it's going to grow and then cover multiple geographies and those types of things. Because it's kind of two different ways of looking at, not only just getting started, but once you get started, where you're going to go from here.
Yeah, that's a great point. One of my early coaches, I think, by the way, hiring coaches and people who know how to do this is a great way to help you develop those systems. But they're not going to help you with that vision as much. Yeah. But one of my coaches early on said to me, so Dave, are you doing this? Is this a hobby for you? And he was saying that because the business wasn't running very well, and I was continuing to do it. Like, wait, you should either fix it or get out. But what you continue to do seems a little bit idiotic. And it was kind of a wake up to me. Like I hadn't really thought of it that way, and it was kind of a turning point for me. To really get serious about making the business, because I wanted to grow it. I really believe in the brand, and I want to be the best MSP in Chicago, Milwaukee market. So, in our vision to do that, there's many aspects of making that happen. Yep. But you're right. I think people make the mistake that growing and getting big is always the answer. And it's not. I mean, I looking back on it, our 11-person MSP ran pretty well and made a nice little income, and it was a fun business. And I think if I knew what it was going to take for me to get to 25 people in the business that I have today, I might rethink that because it was a slog. Yeah. And it was a long slog. But now that we're here, I love it. It's great. It's fun.
Okay. Now, you mentioned coaches and things like that, and I know a big thing with MSPs is peer groups. Now, have you participated in peer groups? And
I'm a member of True Methods. I go to Winter Circle 4 times a year. Schnizzfest with Gary, and I think that peer group experience. Pick the one that works for you. Pick the one that aligns with your business model and kind of the vision. Back to that, but pick the one that works best. I personally think that True Methods is amazing, and has been a game changer for us. But I think that's critical. You got to have somebody that you can talk to that understands your business and is going to pull out the bullshit button. I keep in my office a little bullshit. Because you got to get real about what the business is, and sometimes, and notably when you own it, people don't want to tell you the truth because they're either afraid for their job or they're whatever. So a peer group doesn't care that you own the business because they own their business.
Great. All right. So are you ready for our rapid fire round?
Yes, let's go. Bring it on, baby.
Yeah, these are meant to be easy, so don't put a lot of thought into it. Got 6 ones. Go as fast as we can. You ready?
Yep.
All right. Apple or Android?
Apple.
Okay. Mac, Linux, or Windows?
Windows.
Amazon, Azure, or something else?
Something else.
Okay. Local backups, cloud, or both?
Both.
Okay. Should you always virtualize? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay.
100%.
And finally, which is worse, printer support or vendor cold calls?
That's a tough one, man. I'm going to go ahead and go with printer support, though.
Okay. We talked a lot about printer support.
One's annoying, the other's annoying and problematic, right?
Yeah. So it's kind of 50-50 on that one, as we go through. But printer support, it can be a pain, but like you said, it could also be critical to their business. So it's, something you can't ignore.
Yeah, right.
In terms
Gotta
of
do it.
ensuring everything's up and running.
Yeah.
Great. So before we go, any last words or parting advice you'd like to leave our audience?
I think the day is so busy in our business that it's so easy to forget that. But if you're the business leader, notably the owner or the president, culture should be 20-30% of everything you do. And if you're not working on the company culture, you're not really building the business. You're letting it take on a life of its own.
Okay, great. Well, Dave, I really appreciate you taking the time today. I look forward to hopefully meeting you someday in person at an event.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah.
But great, and have a great week.
Thanks, Doug. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.